I don't accept someone who got knocked up and dropped out of high school. I bet your baby's by some random guy. Get out. That's what Anne, my mother-in-law, says. Then she grabs the tissue box nearby and throws it at me. Luckily, my husband intervenes, so I'm not hit and avoid getting hurt, but being insulted day after day has left me emotionally scarred. Getting married in my teens was probably a bad idea, but it's too early to give up hope. Being young means you can start over in life. Hey, Anne, remember that what goes around comes around. My name's Kara. I'm 40, and even in the chilly winter, my face stays warm. Is this early menopause or what? Though my hands and feet are freezing, tonight's supposed to be cold again, so I'll put on some leg warmers. Anyway, let me tell you about this ice-cold drama I've been through in my life. I got pregnant at 16 and gave birth at 17. Now, having a baby at that age might sound wild, but giving birth wasn't the tough part. It was what happened before. I was in high school when I got pregnant, but I dropped out because of it. My husband, George, is 2 years older, and we were in the same club. We've been together since middle school. So, yeah, people often look at us with those judgmental eyes like having a kid so young, shameful. I guess that's somewhat understandable. But let me tell you, we were dead serious about each other. That's something I want to proclaim loud and clear. When George found out about the pregnancy, he was like, "All right, let's get married." It was like he'd made up his mind right then and there. He said, "Sooner or later, we would have gotten married anyway." It wasn't about taking responsibility. He genuinely wanted to marry me, so I was over the moon. My parents were, of course, furious about the pregnancy, and George was scolded by my dad more times than I can count. Despite all that, they acknowledged our commitment and approved of our marriage and the baby. George's mom, Anne, was also shocked at the young pregnancy and marriage, but accepted it easily. She even suggested, "Your parents both work, right? You can't afford to rent a place yourselves, and raising a child for the first time is tough. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so why don't you move in with me?" Her thoughtfulness and warmth made me feel like she could be a real mom to me. Until then, at least. Now that I'm older, here's what I say to my younger self. Be more skeptical of others' intentions. George's family is a single-parent household. His dad passed away when he was young. Anne had him in her 40s and adored him a lot, probably because she raised him all by herself. I only realized how unnaturally she doted on him when we started living together. I wish I'd known sooner. When he went out to look for work, leaving me alone with her, she said to me, "I only accepted your marriage for appearance's sake. I don't see you as a daughter-in-law." George told me that they faced a lot of challenges because they were a single-parent family. She feared the small-town gossip if her son got a high school girl pregnant and then left her without taking responsibility. I was completely shocked. I had believed I was accepted as part of the family, but the reality hit me like a ton of bricks. From that moment on, she gradually turned into a bullying mother-in-law. Me being pregnant made no difference to her. One afternoon, she asked me, "Kyra, we're out of milk. Can you run to the store and get some?" So I headed to the nearby convenience store. She told me I didn't need to lock the door since it was just a 5 to 10 minute walk. But when I got back home, the door was locked. I buzzed the doorbell but got ignored. If there had been any foot traffic, she, always mindful of appearances, would have let me in right away. But the neighbors around the house were normally at work, so it was pretty dead during the day. I ended up standing there for about an hour until the courier showed up and finally got myself inside. And just to reiterate, I was pregnant. Anne greeted me like nothing happened. "Oh, you're back," with a smug smile. Other than that, she wasted no time pointing out everything I did wrong. How I folded clothes, my cooking skills, my cleaning, it was endless. Even when I fixed things the way she wanted, she'd scold me for something else next time around. And every time she'd say, "No surprise a high school dropout like you doesn't have any common sense. Wonder what kind of upbringing your parents gave you? If they had raised you right, you wouldn't have been knocked up in high school. Whose baby is it really? I can't believe George would do something as reckless as this." "Whose baby? It's your precious son's, lady." She didn't stop at just verbal abuse. She'd mess with my stuff too. Putting pushpins in my shoes, pulling my hair, stuff like that happened all the time. I was insulted and tormented every single day. With a growing belly and all that stress, I was maxed out with stress. George started asking if cohabiting was tough. He had no clue about the bullying I was enduring. Anne played nice with me in front of him. So, he was just concerned that living in an unfamiliar environment was getting to me. I didn't want to worry him, so I'd just say, "Maybe homesick. I'll get used to it soon." I was hiding the fact that I was being mistreated. One day, shortly after George started his new job, he fell sick and came home early. At that time, Anne was tearing up my clothes in the dresser, fully invested in her bullying campaign. She mistook him, who'd just opened the side door, for me coming back from shopping. She greeted him with a wicked smile, holding the torn clothes, saying, "Made some nice rags, you see." When he finally caught on to her bullying, he lost it. He stood up for me in a family meeting, but Anne didn't even apologize. "You wouldn't understand. Being a man, but daughters-in-law normally need discipline." To top it all off, she cursed me out. "I don't accept someone who got knocked up and dropped out of high school. I bet your baby is by some random guy. Get out." She couldn't stand that her prized son married a dropout. She'd been convinced my baby wasn't his, and I doubted I'd ever win her over. To her, I was some loose woman who stole her beloved son. She insulted me every single day, and I was at my breaking point. With tears streaming down my face, I replied, "Okay, I'll leave." Hearing that, she rejoiced with a twisted smile. "Then you're getting divorced, right?" George pleaded. "I'll find us a place to move to ASAP, so let's leave together. Please, don't talk about divorce." He tried desperately to stop me, but I couldn't see it any other way. Looking back, I think I was on the brink of a nervous breakdown or something. He resisted till the end, but I broke down in tears, begging for separation, and we finally got divorced. Getting hitched as a teen was just a recipe for disaster. And just like that, 10 years flew by. One day, an unexpected visitor showed up at my place, my former mother-in-law. I had never told her my address. She said she spotted me while out shopping and followed me in a taxi. Ugh, so creepy. She looked like she hadn't been taking care of herself, leaning on a cane and seeming a bit out of it. Her hair had that matted look you get when you don't wash, and my first impression was that her clothes were all raggedy. She came up to me with tears in her eyes, saying, "Finally found you, Kara. Please, help me." I thought that reaching out to me at that point could only mean one thing. So I played dumb and asked, "What do you want?" "Please, I need you to take care of me." "You're asking for help from the former daughter-in-law you kicked me to the curb? You seem pretty healthy. Do you really need caregiving?" "Can't you see? My legs have problems, and I can't do anything on my own. I've been relying on caregiving services, but I'm broke. Please, I'm begging you. I took care of you for a while before the divorce, remember?" If I remember correctly, I wasn't exactly living it up rent-free, kicking back. I was doing all the housework while pregnant, getting bullied, basically working as your punching bag. So it doesn't feel like I owe you much. "You're heartless to an old lady." I don't want to hear it from someone who was cold to a pregnant daughter-in-law. Besides, why don't you rely on your precious son? I retorted with a smirk. She didn't catch my sarcasm and lamented about his absence.
He's nowhere to be found. He's been gone for 5 years now. Not a word from him. I raised him all by myself, and now look how he treats me.
Oh? Did you call for me? A man's voice chimed in from behind me in response to Anne's complaint. The moment she saw his face, she gasped in disbelief.
George?
Hey, it's been a while, Mom. He smiled like nothing had happened, as if it was just another day.
Why are you here?
It was a valid question.
I couldn't just leave my pregnant ex-wife hanging after we split.
What?
She looked utterly bewildered by his answer. He's been coming here even after the divorce. I explained, to which her eyes widened and she screamed,
You betrayed me!
When we divorced, she threatened us with,
Don't you dare ever contact each other again. We'll acknowledge the kid, but won't pay child support. Raise it on your own, somewhere far from us.
Not paying child support wasn't something you could just get away with, in my opinion. My parents were like,
It's better to steer clear of Anne.
We'll support you financially for the kid. So I didn't push George for it. But he wasn't okay with a divorce in the first place and showed up at my house almost every day after the split, saying he wanted to get back together. He hadn't done anything wrong, but my parents kept blaming him, saying,
It's because of you that our daughter went through hell.
Even then, he kept coming over, undeterred. I heard later that he admitted to my parents he was at fault and apologized for what he'd done to me. He brought child support every month, but my parents told him we didn't want anything to do with him and refused to take it. Realizing he couldn't get anywhere with the child support, he started bringing diapers and stuff for our daughter, showing his sincerity in every way possible, even if it seemed a bit too persistent. Eventually, my parents were moved by his efforts and started asking me,
Don't you want to give him another chance?
I didn't give in so easily, though. I still have feelings for him, but I wasn't sure about jumping back into a relationship with someone I'd already divorced. The idea of remarrying didn't sit well with me. He never gave up and kept proposing to me, even though we weren't even together. Eventually, I gave in. Our daughter had grown attached to him, and my parents were so chill about him visiting that they started asking when we'd marry. Even though I had some reservations, I realized there wasn't anyone else I loved so deeply and no one who loved me more than him. I don't want to get involved with your mom again, so let's not remarry, but just be together. I was weirdly stubborn about it, but he agreed and started living together. Basically, during the time Anne thought he'd gone missing, he was actually with me the whole time. When she found out the truth, she started banging her cane on the floor and yelled,
You scumbags! Rot in hell!
Call us whatever. It's what had to be done for our happiness.
He petted our daughter's head beside him. Anne went pale when she saw her face, a clone of George.
She's really your kid.
I've been telling you that from the start. I couldn't help but interject.
It's all my fault. I was wrong. So please, come back home.
She pleaded desperately. Just because you want us to come back, you're apologizing for the show. I doubt that you're really reflecting on what you did.
No, that's not true. I reflect now.
She stammered. Just now? Isn't it a little late for that? If you'd shown some remorse earlier, we might have been more receptive, but your sincerity isn't coming through at all. When I let out my real thoughts, George chuckled, seeming amused, while Anne trembled, her face burning red.
Stop laughing. You're my son, right, George? You have an obligation to take care of me. Come back home.
Well, yeah, technically, but I'm not really itching to go back home.
You ungrateful child.
Facing her on the verge of losing it, while he remained cool as a cucumber, I chimed in with a smile. How about I take care of you?
Really?
Both of them exclaimed in surprise. Her eyes even seemed to sparkle with joy.
Are you sure about that?
Why not? As a thank you for everything, I'll take care of you as best as I can. Though I gotta admit, I don't have much experience with caregiving, especially when it comes to bath safety and stuff. So, I might mess up a bit. As I chuckled, her face turned visibly pale. Meanwhile, George was cracking up. Well, I guess it is what it is. I'm terrible at cooking, so I might end up making super salty meals that skyrocket your blood pressure.
Enough! I'm leaving! I was an idiot to rely on you guys.
She must have felt a little terrified. Slightly trembling, she called over a caregiver who came with her, urging her to assist her in getting out of the house. Oh, come on. I wouldn't do anything that bad, you know. Only someone like you can do stuff like that. I slipped, my mouth running faster than my brain. And that's how we regained peaceful days once again. After that, Anne ended up relying on her younger sister, with whom she'd always had a rocky relationship. Apparently, she had also suffered a lot of mistreatment from Anne. In the name of caregiving, she put her through quite a lot of ordeal or something like that. Yikes. She seemed rejuvenated when we met at Anne's funeral, looking younger than she had in years. Maybe relieving her stress really did wonders for her. We better not earn people's grudges, you know. When Anne was hospitalized, George went to visit her out of duty as a son. However, she spent the whole time bad-mouthing us, which infuriated him so much that he never visited her again. And there were times when she reached out to see him, but to no avail. Even when she passed away, he reluctantly attended the funeral as a chief mourner, but if I hadn't insisted he go, he would have skipped it. I always thought I was the victim of her bullying, but maybe he, who was divorced because of her, was the real victim all along. A few years after Anne's visit, we finally tied the knot on our daughter's birthday. It felt like we'd already cut ties with her, so why hadn't we remarried sooner? Well, it was just a matter of pride, I guess. I loved George too much to risk another divorce. I did have some doubts, wondering if he just wanted to remarry because of our daughter. I wanted to test if he really loved me. Plus, changing my daughter's last name was another reason why we held off. But honestly, once she started calling him Daddy before we got married, it was pretty clear that remarriage was in the cards. If soulmates are a thing, then George is definitely mine. Even if I were reborn, I'd still want to be a family with him and our daughter.
I was called poor and old and ignored at the bank. 5 hours later, the manager, calling me Mom, showed up. The clerk went pale.
The poor old folks can wait their turn, old hag. I was taken aback by the unbelievable response that came after I couldn't help but raise my voice. If you had just said, I forgot about your turn, my apologies, I would have backed down. Don't regret this later. Despite expecting a sincere apology, the clerk's poor attitude made my head spin. Stunned, I watched the female clerk sigh in annoyance and repeat her refusal. If that's how it's gonna be, I thought, then I might as well stick around like the nuisance she's making me out to be. Filled with a sudden fighting spirit, I took a seat in the lobby. My name is Laura Kiefer, and I'm 75 years old, enjoying my independent lifestyle as what you'd call a senior citizen. But lately, my health has started to decline, and I found myself needing the hospital more often. My legs in particular have become a significant issue due to a lifetime of work that either had me constantly on my feet or sitting down, making it difficult to walk without a handrail or cane. I've even been advised by doctors that weakening legs can rapidly affect cognitive functions, so I've spent the last 6 months getting my affairs in order. My daughter has married and moved to another state, and my son, who lives just a 10-minute walk away, has his own family to look after. With my grandchildren busy with exams and jobs, I'd rather they spend their time enjoying each other's company than caring for me. So I decided to move into a facility without burdening my children. Once I made up my mind, things got hectic with applying for care assistance, finding a facility within my budget, and getting rid of belongings. I had to be selective about what to keep and selling or giving away what I could, which surprisingly amounted to several trucks worth of stuff. Cleaning out a house is quite the task, but it left the place looking neat and tidy. I was lucky to find a satisfactory facility nearby. While I needed my son for some of the paperwork, I managed to handle most of it myself, something I take a bit of pride in. With my finances sorted out and all the tedious tasks handed off to a legal professional, all that was left was to move into the facility. That's when the incident at the bank happened. "Ma'am, your transfer will be processed in just a moment," said the clerk, who clearly wasn't thrilled to handle my transaction in person. Her face almost saying, "Why not use the ATM instead of bothering us?" Some folks in customer service really don't enjoy dealing with older customers, probably because it's a hassle to confirm every little detail with someone hard of hearing and not great with small print. "I appreciate your help with this," I said with a smile, trying to smooth things over, but she just scowled and didn't even nod. The tension in the air, that particular stress of being swamped with work, made me feel terrible. Her name tag read Katie Miller, and it's true, most people would just use an ATM. But I've always been a bit old-fashioned and not great at using them, especially under the pressure of a line forming behind me. It makes me nervous and prone to mistakes, so I've insisted on doing transactions like these at the counter, even if it costs more time and a fee. Better safe than sorry when dealing with significant amounts of money, you know? Though I initially thought I had all the time in the world, time kept slipping by while others were called before me, leaving me unattended. "Excuse me, this is my number, but I haven't been called yet. Is it going to take much longer?" I asked after waiting a considerable time. The clerk looked up in shock, clearly having forgotten about me. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. We're just really busy today, and verification is taking longer than usual," she said, but it felt more like an excuse than an apology. I could understand being busy. End of the fiscal year, end of the month, and on a Friday, no less, compounded by rainy weather, made it a particularly hectic day for banks. I should have chosen another day, but I had completely forgotten until I arrived. With a long line at the ATMs and every seat in the lobby taken, the place was bustling and felt quite tense. "I understand it's an unusually busy day. I was just worried something might have gone wrong," I said. "If you're pressed for time, it might be better to come back in a few days when it's quieter. We'll be looking forward to serving you then," she replied without changing her surly expression. It was clear she was waiting for me to say I'd come back another time, which soured my mood. "The poor old folks can wait their turn, old hag," I heard her say as I was about to leave. I couldn't believe what I had just heard and turned around in shock. It's generally known that lower tones are easier to hear as you age, so she probably thought I wouldn't catch that, but I did. Going to the bank is a big deal for someone with mobility issues like mine. Not just the cost of transportation, but the physical toll of dealing with unfamiliar settings. And to be told to come back another time was outrageous. I couldn't help but step closer to the counter. "If you had just said, 'I forgot about your turn, my apologies,' I would have backed down. Don't regret it later," I told her, visibly upset. Yet, the clerk didn't change her attitude, looking at me as if trying to figure out how to get rid of an annoying complainer, not even bothering to hide her disdainful sigh. "Ma'am, it's first come, first served. Everyone's waiting their turn. Please understand. Next in line," she said, deciding to treat me as an unwanted nuisance. Well, if that's how it's gonna be, I was ready to dig my heels in. With my newfound resolve, I decided to wait it out. After 5 hours, I couldn't help but think how petty this was, but the standoff continued. She must have had her pride, insisting on making me wait. The more she ignored me, the more it became almost comical. Hey, why don't we agree to end this standoff? The bank will be closing soon, right? I offered as a way out. Please wait your turn, she repeated, unyielding even as closing time approached. Just when I was at my wit's end. Mom, what's going on? I heard my son's voice from behind. He was a banker here, coming back from his rounds. His name tag clearly says he's the branch manager. Didn't you say you were going to make a deposit first thing this morning? Why are you still here? He asked. I explained how I had been waiting for 5 hours due to the busy day. The clerk's eyes widened in realization as she heard him call me Mom. You're the branch manager's mother? Are you in charge of the teller services today, Miss Miller? What's going on here? Making a customer wait for 5 hours isn't acceptable. What happened? He pressed, his tone stern. Well, it's just that this money transfer is, Katie stuttered, trying to explain, but Paul decided to take the conversation elsewhere and directed another employee to escort me to the lounge. Before long, I was sitting comfortably on a sofa, served coffee and snacks. Then, after about 10 minutes, Katie, accompanied by the branch manager, entered the lounge, trembling, to finally address the situation. I'm terribly sorry for not realizing you were the branch manager's mother, and for the disrespect. With how busy we were, I accidentally mixed up the order of service. Gone was the confident and haughty demeanor, replaced by the clerk's meek smile. It is unacceptable to leave a customer who came in first thing in the morning waiting for 5 hours. This oversight in both the teller service and floor management is a result of my inadequate supervision. I deeply apologize. The branch manager apologized, seemingly waiting for my response. I took a moment before suggesting both of them to take a seat. Look, I understand today was exceptionally busy with it being the end of the term and such. But Miss Miller, when I came to check on my turn, you told me to come back another day. Is this the kind of instruction you give out when it's busy? Ms. Miller, did you really say that to our customer? It seemed the clerk had downplayed her mistake. A vein throbbed on the branch manager's temple, a clear sign of his anger. Well, there were so many corporate clients needing to complete transactions today. We were really short-staffed. I thought if it wasn't urgent, it could wait until another day. I was just trying to help by suggesting a later date. She tried to appear smaller, covering her face with a handkerchief. That's odd. I saw how busy it was, but you were laughing about how poor old folks can wait their turn. Was your busy an excuse for mistreating customers? The room went ice cold with my words, leaving everyone, including the branch manager, speechless. We're all humans. We forget things occasionally. But I came back several times to check, and each time, Miss Miller, you insisted it was just about waiting your turn. That sounds intentional to me. Am I wrong? Cornered, the clerk's eyes flashed dangerously. What's the big deal? Transfer can be done at the ATM. It's your fault for insisting on coming to the counter. Her frustration finally burst out. Her eyes narrowed, and her voice dropped from a polite customer service tone to a low growl. On a busy day like today, if it's not urgent, don't bother us. Everyone's always thinking about themselves. That's why people call you a nuisance. I almost blurted out. Annoying or not, isn't that just part of working at a bank? But somehow I managed to hold back. If you're too busy to manage, you should have asked the branch manager to review staffing, not push the problem onto customers. And busy is your business. You're imposing your situation on me. The clerk was taken aback, her earlier bravado turning into a glare. Even on the busiest days, maintaining basic courtesy is part of the job. I didn't badmouth you or cause any trouble. Oh, Miss Miller. The branch manager fluctuated between going red and pale from anger and astonishment, clearly not expecting such rudeness from his employee. I never said anything about being poor. Do you have proof? Just because you're a customer doesn't mean you can accuse the staff without basis. You're a bit paranoid, aren't you? Really? You prioritized others because you didn't want to be busy yourself, right? Between a person who left customers waiting on purpose and someone who patiently waited for 5 hours, whose story seems more credible? Any thoughts, branch manager? Finally recalling her position and the current situation, the clerk looked awkwardly at the branch manager beside her. Oh, of course we believe the customer. This conversation alone has made it clear Ms. Miller was not sincere. We will take appropriate actions and report back to you. For now, may I offer my apologies for today's incident? All right, let's leave it at that for today. Just make sure the transfer is processed, please. The manager offered to drive me home, but I politely declined and made my way back. The clerk's persistent glare showed a stubbornness that was almost admirable in a way. A few days later, I found myself chatting leisurely with my daughter-in-law about the 5-hour wait, turning it into a lighthearted story. My son and his wife, living just a 10-minute walk away, would check on me now and then, worrying about their solo-living mother. I usually informed them of my whereabouts and expected return time, but that day had unintentionally stretched over 5 hours. Checking my phone later, I found a string of messages and missed calls from my daughter-in-law, which is both amusing and guilt-inducing. My bag had buried my phone, completely slipping my mind. It seems I caused quite a bit of worry by not returning home well past the expected time. I had no idea that was the reason why you came back so late. That must have been a tough day for you, Laura. Yeah, it was. Sorry for worrying you. Sitting for 5 hours straight really stiffened my body. The stubborn stand resulted in back and hip pains the next day. I kept busy with visits to the chiropractor and acupuncturist, a secret from my son to avoid the old person's reckless behavior lecture. If he found out about my reliance on painkillers, he might insist on daily care. Did that clerk have something against older people? She seems a bit extreme. Apparently, she's been having trouble with her mother-in-law she lives with. Seeing women who resemble her mother-in-law seems to unsettle her. After the incident, the branch manager came to apologize again. Despite being family, he earnestly made amends, but the clerk was nowhere to be seen. Even a slow learner like her should learn to handle her banking independently after that. I helped our bank by reducing unnecessary work. There's no need for me to apologize. If anything, it's that old lady that needs to apologize to me. The clerk refused to join the apology. She had returned to work as a contract employee after her children grew up. However, customer service complaints and her poor reputation among younger workers had piled up. This incident was the last straw, leading to her suggested resignation. She protested until the last minute. What quieted her down was being told that her family would be informed. She didn't want her mother-in-law to know about her unemployment. The mother-in-law, known locally for her nastiness, seemed to enjoy burdening her with tasks for amusement, believing in troubling others as a form of justice. She would bother her daughter-in-law for trivial tasks that she could handle on her smartphone herself. My resemblance to her in looks and dress likely triggered the clerk's reaction. It seems the clerk, wanting a break from living with her mother-in-law, tried to find another job to avoid letting her family know about her unemployment. But in the end, they found out about this incident. "I'll supervise you all day," her mother-in-law gleefully declared, leaving the clerk in tears. It might have been the harshest punishment for her, but her family's issues aren't really my business to meddle in. If she wanted revenge, she should have taken out on the person directly, not on strangers. What a troublesome person. Exactly. She must have been venting on others because she couldn't get back at the person she actually had a problem with. From the clerk's perspective, it must have been frustrating dealing with someone who could have done things themselves but chose to make others do it, like her mother-in-law or me. I feel somewhat guilty about that, but after all, everyone has their own weaknesses. The baseline should be doing what you can on your own, but it's not wrong to seek help when something is genuinely beyond your grasp. Targeting mainly the elderly who might easily make mistakes due to hearing issues or confusion was particularly malicious. Honestly, if being busy is that bothersome, customer service might not be the right field for her. However, it's completely unacceptable to manipulate people out of malice, as the clerk's mother-in-law did. Despite the difficulties of the day, it was somewhat nice to see how my son, the branch manager, conducts himself at work. But it must be hard on him to manage such a person. Apologizing is part of a manager's job, but that kind of stress could be harmful, and I worry it might even lead to him losing his hair. I hope my diligent and honest son ends up surrounded by competent and reasonable subordinates. I can't help but pray for that. I hear it's common for bankers to be transferred or change positions in their mid-50s, so it's just a few more years for him. By the way, I've successfully moved into the facility and I'm living peaceful days. Despite earning the clerk's grudge, being in the facility means I don't have to worry about any sort of revenge from her, which is a relief. Living in a community at this age has its surprises, but with private rooms ensuring privacy, I'm mostly satisfied. I've met a few friends with whom I share hobbies and we enjoy our daily tea and recreational activities together. Thanks to a regular lifestyle and a balanced diet, my health seems to have improved, for which I'm grateful. Even if my weakened legs don't recover, I aim to live out the rest of my life without becoming bedridden. The phrase sudden death might sound a bit morbid, but that's essentially my ultimate goal.
My MIL told me she won't need to suck on her son's finances anymore. Next day, she storms into her son's hospital room in a panic.
My name is Amelia, 35 years old. I've been married to Ryan for 10 years. Our long-awaited daughter, Aria, has turned 4, and we were living a busy yet peaceful life. However, that routine changed last week. Ryan recently has been feeling dizzy with frequent headaches, so I urged him to go to the hospital.
You're exaggerating. You're just a little tired.
But it's too late if something happens. I persuaded my reluctant husband to go to the hospital.
Your family should come with you to hear the results.
Hearing this from the doctor made me break out in a cold sweat. It can't be good news if the family is called.
Please stay calm and listen carefully.
The diagnosis was a well-known intractable disease. My mind went blank. I should be the one supporting my husband, but he was the one supporting me, preventing me from falling. Will he be cured?
We can't be sure. We'd have to treat it as soon as possible, though. It would be better to start intensive treatment with hospitalization soon.
We were able to go home together that day, but he had to be hospitalized the next week.
I'll explain to my boss tomorrow and ask for a leave.
Okay.
Amelia, I'm sorry.
Don't apologize.
We still have our daughter to raise, but the treatment costs seem large. And that's why...
We've both been working for times like this, eh? Get well soon with proper treatment. Promise. I interrupted my husband's words. According to the doctor, the treatment will cost about $2,000 a month. I earned a decent amount as an accountant, and although I'm currently working reduced hours for childcare, changing to regular hours should make things manageable. My husband was holding back his tears at my words. Fortunately, the company granted him a leave of absence. It's a relief not having to quit my job, although we don't know how long the treatment will take. He said this and headed for the hospital for recovery.
Where's Daddy?
Daddy will be away for a while. He's going to fight his illness. Do you think you can cheer him on?
But will he come back?
Of course. I explained this to our young daughter. She was a daddy's girl and would cry missing him, but she seemed to understand when I comforted her. I switched from part-time to full-time and started working as much as I could. I enjoyed working and found it fulfilling. However, I couldn't focus solely on my job without my husband around. The thought of making my daughter feel lonely because I came home late, especially without my husband, was overwhelming. I couldn't help wishing my parents' home was closer. They lived so far that I had to take a plane to visit them. When I explained my husband's illness to my parents, they said to let them know if I needed anything, but they were also working. It was not possible for them to come here. Earning for my husband's treatment while thinking about my child, when I was about to break down, the phone rang.
Amelia, are you okay?
Oh, hello. It was my mother-in-law who lived about 20 minutes by car from us. Ryan avoided getting close to his parents, so we only interacted during the holidays or family gatherings, and I didn't know much about my in-laws. He told me that there was no need to interact too much, but I wasn't sure if those words were out of concern for me. I was relieved that she called, probably because we had told her about her son's illness. That made me spill out my anxieties. The anxiousness of seeing Ryan go through his illness, the cost of treatment, the pressure of balancing work and parenting by myself. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It must have been tough.
My mother-in-law comforted me and listened to me talk. I feel a bit relieved after talking.
Oh.
Hmm?
I can take care of your daughter. And you said balancing work and parenting was tough, right?
But
it'll be much better for her than staying alone at home.
I was not given a chance to argue, and I ended up thinking she might be right. I'm sorry I'm late. When I went to pick my daughter up at my in-laws, she ran up to me. She fell asleep in my arms as if relieved. Feeling reassured, I hugged her, and my mother-in-law appeared shortly after.
Well, you've been working late.
Thank you for your support until so late at night.
Don't worry about it. But you know, I'm desperately keeping my old body going while watching my grandchild.
Yes. My mother-in-law sighed with a troubled look. I just hugged my daughter, tighter as I nodded, looking for words to answer back.
So, could you perhaps consider some compensation?
Money, you mean?
Oh no, did it sound like that?
When I started leaving my daughter with my in-laws, I brought some assorted sweets to show my thanks, but I recall my mother-in-law asking if that was all. I intended to pay all necessary expenses with gratitude, but I was surprised when she asked if that was all I had. But reconsidering my position of requesting for help, I complied and paid $100, then $200, and eventually I was giving her about $300 a month. Yet, she is asking for more. How much would be enough?
Well, about $700 a month would be good.
$700? That's more than double what I'm currently paying. Considering my husband's treatment and our living expenses, we can't afford to give $700 every month. That's...
You know, I want to help too. My grandchild is adorable and it's for my precious son. You understand, right?
My mother-in-law said with an apologetic look. I was speechless as I took a look at my daughter sleeping in my arms. I couldn't leave my daughter alone at home. I hesitated to leave her with a babysitter or someone else, as I wondered if staying with my in-laws would be better for her. Okay. My mother-in-law smiled brightly.
We're family after all. We should help each other out.
How are you feeling?
Much better. The doctor said the new medicine seems to be working.
Oh, that's good. When I visited the hospital with some new clothes and snacks, my husband, who looked much better than at the beginning of his hospitalization, greeted me. He seems to be recovering gradually, and the doctor is pleased with his progress.
How's Arya? Is she not feeling lonely?
She keeps asking when you'll be back.
Well, then I need to get better soon for Arya.
Please do.
I'm really sorry for the trouble, Amelia.
Don't apologize. Getting better is what matters most, I said with a smile as he bit his lip.
Work must be tough, right? What's Arya doing while you're at work?
I hadn't yet told my husband that I was leaving our daughter with his parents, nor about the money I was sending. I didn't want to worry him, given his illness.
Amelia?
I'm sorry.
What's wrong?
As he looked into my worried face, I finally told him the truth. The struggle of balancing work and parenting. Being reached out by my mother-in-law to take care of our daughter. Being asked for more and more money. I'm sorry for making these decisions on my own. Listening to me, my husband frowned deeply.
It's my fault. I didn't realize how much you were struggling.
He said, comforting me by stroking my shoulder.
I'll take care of it,
he said with a determined look. I no longer need you to take care of her from tomorrow.
Oh, is that so?
A week after discussing with my husband, I told my mother-in-law when I went to pick up our daughter after asking her to get into the car first. Yes, we found a good babysitter, and I think that'll be better for our daughter.
Is that so?
She seemed uninterested in our conversation, responding nonchalantly.
Oh, I received a call from Kayla.
Kayla?
Yes. Ryan's older sister. She lives in England now.
I had only met Ryan's sister Kayla once at our wedding, so I barely knew her. She's been working in research in England and rarely comes back to the US. She is spoken of highly by my in-laws and Ryan.
She's coming back soon. It's just a visit, though.
Oh, that's nice.
So it worked out well.
My mother-in-law started bragging about her daughter. I see, so that's the kind of person she was.
She says she would send money because it must be hard for me.
Oh.
So I won't be needing to suck on my son's finances.
She laughed triumphantly.
You pretend to work hard, but you're just probably living off my son's insurance money, right? Thinking you could slack off while leaving your child with me? Such a shameless mother.
She rattled on about her feelings, but I was just letting her words flow over me. I understand, and I won't send you any more.
With such little money, I couldn't do much anyway. Kayla will surely give me a substantial amount.
I was sending you the money as necessary expenses, and thanks for taking care of my daughter. How did you use the money, though?
Just a little shopping and a drink, and it's gone in no time.
I haven't even been able to go to the restaurant I've always wanted to visit, nor could I buy the luxury bag I wanted. Without any remorse, she said this and closed the door on me, as if chasing me away. The money I earned while making my daughter feel lonely turned into my mother-in-law's play money. Thinking this made me feel helpless. The next day, when I went to visit my husband's hospital room, it was chaotic outside.
What's happening outside?
As I was talking to my husband, the door burst open with a loud noise. There stood my mother-in-law, furious.
Mom?
You! What did you say?
Ignoring my husband, she yelled straight at me. A nurse hurriedly followed her from behind, but she brushed off the nurse's hand and approached me aggressively. What is this about?
Well, how pretentious. You said something to Kayla, didn't you?
Forgetting this is a hospital room, she raised her voice. I didn't say anything.
Stop lying. If it wasn't for you, she wouldn't say that she won't give me money. And somehow I got kicked out of the house, too.
My agitated mother-in-law was panting heavily. Watching her, I spoke calmly again. I really didn't say anything.
Don't you dare lie.
She was furious. Then my husband spoke up.
I was the one who said it.
What?
Her mouth hung open in surprise.
I called Kayla. I didn't want to worry her, so I didn't say anything for a while, but I contacted her recently.
And what does that have to do with anything?
She still couldn't grasp the situation.
Well, she said she was planning to send some money because with me being sick, she thought you must have a tough time supporting me. But since we stopped leaving our daughter with you, there's really no point in giving you money.
Then, Amelia, you should reconsider leaving your daughter with a babysitter and have me take care of her again.
I was aware of it, but seeing my mother-in-law's lack of concern for our family, especially for her son, left me utterly disgusted. It seemed my husband felt the same.
There's no way I'd leave her with you. Planning to use the allowance in gratitude just for yourself?
What are you saying?
She glared at me again. It's wrong to blame me, but perhaps I'm the most hated person here.
You said something unnecessary.
Stop blaming Amelia. It's all your fault.
I heard my husband raise his voice for the first time. Apparently it was her first time too, and she seemed shocked as her eyes widened.
We should have cut ties properly.
Ryan? What are you saying?
Since high school, you've been taking my part-time earnings, and I never really had pocket money. Even during college, you kept telling me how much it cost to raise me and how much trouble I caused, and demanded to pay it back.
Of course, that's normal.
I grimaced, recalling the old stories my husband told me. He had been exploited by his mother for a long time. From high school, when he started working part-time, his earnings were taken away by her, and it continued even in college. He realized something was wrong when he started working and living alone.
Did Dad know that you were taking money from me?
Your father has nothing to do with this.
He's a decent man. If he knew you were taking money from me, he wouldn't have allowed it.
My husband realized it must have been solely his mother's decision at the time. His father, an executive in a company, seemed not to have any financial troubles. When talking about university, his father happily told him to go where he wanted. He allowed his son to attend the university he wanted without needing any financial help. But once he became a working adult and returned home, his mother demanded money from him whenever his father was away.
I thought I owed you for taking care of me, so I just decided to keep my distance. I didn't tell Dad or Kayla either.
From then on, he kept away from his parents. Even after getting married, he continued to keep his distance because he never knew what might happen.
It ended up like this because I left it vague. But to do this to my family?
Ryan? I'm also family, right? I've been family with you much longer than this woman over here. You are my flesh and blood. Paying back for raising you is just natural.
Did you even visit once after finding out I was sick? Were you worried?
Of course.
You weren't worried. You were just exploiting my illness to take more money. How is that family?
I put my hands on my husband's shoulder as he raised his voice. I was worried about him getting too excited, but couldn't stop him.
We're cutting ties with you.
What? What are you saying?
Don't show up in front of me or my family again.
Please, Ryan!
My mother-in-law collapsed, but no one tried to support her. Then my father-in-law and sister-in-law, who had come pick her up, took her away. We knew she might come to the hospital room since we kept in touch with them. My husband wanted to talk to his mother properly one last time so they didn't disturb us.
I'm truly sorry about what happened.
I'm sorry for everything too. After my mother-in-law left, my father-in-law and sister-in-law came back to apologize. I thought they were not to blame, but they apologized for not noticing my mother-in-law's actions. My father-in-law was not informed about my husband's illness. He was only told that they were taking care of their granddaughter. Ryan's sister, Kayla, who moved to England while still young, didn't know her younger brother was treated like that by their mother.
Ryan, I can't believe I let you go through that as a child, and I feel so bad about it. I was wrong for not speaking up. I'm grateful for you letting me go to college and for letting me do the studies I wanted to pursue. Soon after, my mother-in-law and father-in-law divorced. My mother-in-law apparently complained endlessly, but her embezzlement and debts were uncovered, and she was giving a divorce decree. It seems the money from the property division was also used to pay off her debts. Now she seems to live alone in an old apartment.
My father-in-law and sister-in-law helped us with the treatment costs and in many other ways. I think it was also their way of apologizing. They even returned the money my husband had been extorted and the money I had sent to my mother-in-law. My husband recovered steadily and was able to be discharged from the hospital.
I'm back. Thank you for everything, Amelia.
He said that and hugged me and our daughter tightly. While almost crying, I savored the happiness. This moment is not to be taken for granted. I want to cherish being together and live happily with my family close by my side.
When my mother-in-law tried to spoil our family vacation by going in my place, she made a huge mistake.
Families are the people you're related to by blood. Have fun watching the house while we're on vacation.
My mother-in-law said that with a triumphant look on her face. How rotten could she get? Watch out. I'll show you what happens to people who mess with me. My name is Audrey. I'm 35 years old. I'm just a regular housewife living together with my husband Fred and daughter Stephanie. Housewives have it toughest in the morning, between making breakfast, helping Stephanie get ready for school, throwing out the trash, and so on. It can be overwhelming. Today, Fred left for work and I dropped Stephanie off at school as always.
Bye-bye, Mom.
Have fun at school. Once the two were away, I could finally catch my breath. Returning home, I finished up some final chores and then got to work. I work as an illustrator. I do my job remotely. People always tell me I'm lucky to work from home. Not having to commute does take a weight off things. But for better or for worse, I can never fully detach myself from work. While doing housework or taking care of Stephanie, all I can think about is my work. But I'm fine with that. I like my job after all. I checked my project plan for the day and got to work. Sitting down, I noticed the cat-shaped pen holder on my desk. Picking it up, I looked at it for a while. This is something very important to me. Fred gave it to me on our first date. I met Fred 10 years ago. We got to know each other when I was hired for a project at the publishing company he works at. I was in charge of creating illustrations for a magazine they printed. I had just started working as an illustrator, but Fred treated me really kindly. At other publishers, I'm sure I would have been scolded or belittled.
The detail of these lines is really well done. Illustrations really show the personality and emotions of their artist, don't they? I really like this drawing.
I immediately took a liking to Fred because, as a newcomer, no one had ever said such kind things to me before. After my project at the publishing company ended, we continued meeting up and started dating. We then eventually got married. However, I wasn't Fred's first wife. His previous wife had passed away from an illness, and he had been left to take care of their daughter alone. That was Stephanie. I never imagined that getting married would give me a 6-year-old daughter, but Fred's seriousness and Stephanie's sweetness pulled me in and made me decide to make the leap. Fred has always been a kind husband and reliable father. Stephanie was naturally a bit defensive at first, but we quickly grew close. Fred understood my work well and earnestly helped around the house and with Stephanie when I was busy. I really married a great man. I'm incredibly busy every day, but there's nothing more I can ask for in life. That's what I thought. But
Audrey, you're here, aren't you?
a barrage of doorbell ringing and a rasping voice pulled me out of my concentration. And I had just come up with a good idea. A bit annoyed, I headed to the front door. Looking through the peephole, I saw my mother-in-law standing outside, looking flustered. Again. I've told her countless times to call before she visits, but she just won't listen. The illustration I'm working on today is due soon. I'm sorry, but I don't have time for her. Thinking that, I opened the door. And why are you here?
Do I need a reason to come over? You're always home anyway, so what's the issue?
I'm in the middle of work. I'm sorry, but today...
Work? You're just messing around, right? I'm hungry. Make me lunch.
She ignored me and walked right into our home. As I said, I'm in the middle of work. If you're hungry, please eat at your own home.
You sure have some nerve. Have you not been taught that you shouldn't talk back to your elders?
I couldn't say anything back to her, but I also couldn't let her continue. Please. My project's deadline is coming up soon.
You really are so annoying. In that case, shut yourself up in your room and work. I'll do what I want. Ugh, you're such a pain.
I let out a deep sigh. Talking to her anymore will just be a waste of time. I'll be in my office. Do what you will. I said that and went back to my work. If I had one wish, it would be to cut off ties with my mother-in-law. She's always bothering me while I'm working. What was her problem? I could barely hold in my anger as I walked over to my desk. But finishing this project comes first. I was desperate to get back into focus. At a bit past 2 p.m., I heard a car engine noise from near the front door. The school bus? This much time has already passed. I skipped lunch without even realizing. Stephanie was already home.
Mom, I'm home.
Her cheery voice rang through the house. As I was heading to meet Stephanie,
Stephanie, welcome home.
my mother-in-law was one step ahead of me.
Huh? Where's Mom? Your mom is too busy to play with you. She loves her work more than she loves you. Isn't she a horrible mother?
I heard her hateful words. How dare she says things like that to a child?
And that's not true. Mom always tells me she loves me more than anything else.
Not believing her grandmother, Stephanie walked over to my office.
Mom, what's for dinner tonight?
She said with a smile. She really was so adorable. But from behind her, my mother-in-law was glaring at me devilishly. Thinking about it, my mother-in-law has treated me like this since Fred and I first got married. I'm not sure whether she didn't like my job or just didn't like me.
Even a child could do this work. How stupid. I feel bad for Stephanie with her mom doing such an unserious job. Quit your job and move in with me. If someone like you is in charge of raising Stephanie, what will happen to her?
She always says things like that to me. Of course, I fight back, and Fred also speaks up for me. But my mother-in-law never listened. She was a genius at pretending she can't hear us. But there was one thing that saved me, and that was the fact that Stephanie didn't trust her grandmother. I was ready to jump and attack my mother-in-law for the things she said to Stephanie about me, but Stephanie replied,
I love Mom. Grandma, you're lying, aren't you?
Stephanie trusted me, but I'm sure this will begin to affect Stephanie eventually, so I can't let things continue like this. It was time to put some distance between us. Even Fred says so. I was getting extremely annoyed with my mother-in-law. One day at dinner, Fred said,
Hey, how about we go on a family trip?
A family trip?
Yeah, it seems like I can use the paid days off I've been saving up. How about going somewhere, the three of us? Stephanie will be starting summer break soon too.
That sounds great. Let's do it. I readily agreed.
Stephanie, where do you want to go?
Stephanie gave it some thought.
If it's with Mom and Dad, I'll go anywhere.
At that moment, tropical island scenery appeared on the TV. Thinking about it, I haven't been to the beach in years.
How about we go to Guam?
And like that, it was decided. International travel. We haven't gone abroad since our honeymoon. How exciting. Using our trip as motivation, I put my all into my work. Since summer break is peak travel season, the flights were a bit pricey, but one should treat themselves every once in a while. We booked a 5-day, 4-night trip to Guam for our family. Our trip just around the corner, and my mother-in-law came over unannounced as I was working, as always. I wanted to chase her away, but dealing with her was a hassle. I opened the front door for her, as always.
You're being awfully obedient today.
I'm sure I was just in a good mood because our trip was coming up soon. As soon as my mother-in-law sat down on our living room sofa,
What's this?
she was pointing at a pamphlet on our coffee table. We're going to be going on a family trip there soon.
I haven't heard anything about that.
Sorry, we're leaving next week and we'll be gone for a week. We'll bring you back souvenirs. I thought for sure that I was going to be blamed for not telling her about the trip.
That's not what I'm talking about. If it's a family trip, shouldn't I be invited too?
Fred and I discussed things and we decided to go just the three of us. We can go on a trip together with you next time. I said that to try to smooth things over.
Family are the people you're related to by blood. I should be the one going, not you.
She said something ridiculous. What are you talking about? There's no way.
I'm going on the family trip. Have fun watching the house while we're on vacation.
Don't be so selfish. That won't happen. I argued vehemently with my mother-in-law.
No, I'm going. No matter what anyone says, I'm going.
She continued on strongly. It was as if I was arguing with a child in the middle of a temper tantrum.
You aren't our family. You're just a stranger.
You aren't our family? Those words stabbed into my heart. Why do I have to hear this? Tears spilled out from my eyes. As my mother-in-law walked away, I noticed Stephanie standing nearby. She was already back from school. I was so shaken that I didn't realize what time it was. Stephanie looked at me worriedly.
Mom, are you okay? Did Grandma say something mean to you?
It's okay, Stephanie. I wiped my tears and smiled at Stephanie.
Mom, I love you. I will protect you.
Hearing Stephanie's words, I cried again, but this time of happiness. At the same time, I felt a bit pathetic. Showing my daughter such a weak side of myself, what in the world was I doing? How could I make my 6-year-old daughter feel like she has to say that to me? I can't let things continue like this. I told Fred what happened.
She shouldn't talk like that. Audrey, I'm sorry.
Please talk to her. Why do I have to be made a fool of and told that I'm not part of the family? I was so frustrated that tears flowed from my eyes again.
I'm really sorry.
Your mother says she's going to go on the trip no matter what. Fred made a concerned face.
Once she makes up her mind, she won't listen to any reasoning.
We both held our heads in our hands. I won't let her get in the way of our fun trip. On the day of our departure, my mother-in-law arrived at our house with a huge suitcase.
Stephanie, I'll be joining the trip instead of your mom.
Stephanie didn't look happy to be hearing that at all.
Mom, why? Come on, why? It's okay, it'll definitely be fun. But I want Mom there.
Don't worry. I'll be there.
You're only here to drive us to the airport.
My mother-in-law said that with a wide grin. The four of us headed to the airport. But then, as we were checking into the flight,
Ma'am, I'm sorry, but you won't be able to board this flight.
The staff at the counter didn't let my mother-in-law check in. The face my mother-in-law made at that moment was priceless. With anger bubbling up from the bottom of her heart, her face grew bright red.
What do you mean?
As I said, you won't be able to board this flight. The name on your passport is different from the name that the flight reservation is under.
My daughter-in-law is unable to go, so I'll be flying in her place. What's the issue?
For security reasons, we cannot allow that.
She was turned down over and over. With a worn-out look on his face, Fred carried on with the check-in.
How could you do this?
If you cause any more commotion, we will have to call security.
My mother-in-law was pulled away from the check-in counter. Have you finally understood? My mother-in-law looked stunned. She really was clueless. There's obviously no way she could go in my place if the ticket was preserved under my name. In a country like the United States, that would never fly. Knowing that she would get rejected like that, I handed her my flight reservation information without giving it much thought. Fred also helped me out. After talking things through, we decided it would be best for his mother to experience something like this at least once. But she couldn't handle her anger and exploded.
Audrey, you! How far will you go to make me feel like a fool? I pity Stephanie for having such a petty mother like you. You idiot woman!
At that moment, a voice screamed,
Stop! Grandma, stop bullying Mom. I want to go on this trip with Mom and Dad. You should just go home. We're trying to have fun. I was looking forward to this so much. I hate you, Grandma.
Hearing those words from the granddaughter she loved, the look of shock on my mother-in-law's face looked like it was straight out of a cartoon.
Stephanie, you hate me? I hate you. I hate you so much.
Stephanie turned her back to her grandmother. I left Fred to deal with his mother, whose heart had been shattered, and I finished the check-in while hugging Stephanie in my arms. Of course, my check-in went smoothly. That's only natural. After being scolded by Fred, his mother went home. My mother-in-law's slouched back as she walked away clearly showed her disappointment. Unable to go on the trip, hated by her grandmother. It's what she deserved. After we sat in the plane, I spoke to Fred about what happened. Don't scold Stephanie too much about what happened. She was doing it to protect me.
I know. She was angry at her grandma, too. Audrey, I'm sorry for putting you through all that.
Don't worry about it. Let's enjoy this trip as much as we can. And that's exactly what we did. Fred's mother didn't contact us even once during the trip. It felt like a breath of fresh air. From then on, my mother-in-law never spoke poorly of me again. Well, more like she stopped coming over. Actually, after our family trip, she tried visiting once.
A grandma like you that just bullies Mom? You aren't my family. I hate you.
Stephanie completely rejected her grandma, though they were related by blood. Stephanie, you shouldn't say things like that. I warned her. I had to teach her that she should treat her grandma with respect, regardless.
But I want to protect you, Mom. You always seem so sad.
Stephanie wanted to protect me, her mom, even if we weren't related by blood. There was no way I could blame her for that. Thank you, Stephanie. I love you. But you should treat people with kindness.
Okay, but you won't cry anymore, right?
I won't. Thanks to you, I'm happy. I gave her a tight hug. It doesn't matter if we're blood related or not. Stephanie is my daughter, my family. Ostracized from her son and granddaughter, who will my mother-in-law rely on from now on? Thinking about that is a bit sad, but I won't forgive her for the way she treated me. Don't look down on me. Do you understand?
Dad, you should protect Mom from now on too.
Of course, I will do all I can so our family can live happily ever after.
I'm not sure if he understands what's going through my mind now that I've got my revenge on my mother-in-law, but looking at Fred, I feel my eyes getting misty. I'm so happy I married him and became Stephanie's mom. And I'm happy that my daughter is growing up to be so tender and strong.